Hi, I am Mike, the Hermit of Loch Eyre. Before I moved here 20 years ago to the Pacific Northwest, we were living in Minnesota, and my children had a game, a video game they played called Myst. I think it was spelled M-Y-S-T. I think the game was actually created by a couple of brothers that were teenagers who lived here in the Northwest. But moving to the Pacific Northwest, you have to embrace the winters of rain and drizzle and fog. But the game I remember was always this foggy area of conifers, of cedars and Douglas fir, and that's the life that you live here in the wintertime. And you have to grow to love it, and I do. Let's go on up to the cottage and have a conversation. Good morning. Welcome to my little abode here. In case you're wondering, I don't think I explained. I am building a cottage from scratch. Part of my cancer rehab program that I created for myself, it had been my dream to move to Europe or the Middle East in retirement and restore a very old stone cottage, and cancer put an end to that. And I came up with the idea of building it here on our property, and it's been a long process getting permits. Anyway, I have a YouTube channel I've created along with this one, a totally different world, and no controversial discussions. Unless you're a very good carpenter, then you may be distressed over that series. But that series, I call it the Cancer Hut / Healing, or the Cancer Cottage / Healing Hut. Today, I want to finish up on this idea of culture and Christianity. And I know I tend to be redundant about a few things, and I'll be redundant again here. I noticed there's about 20 people following this, and my thoughts, there might be 5, because this is a very niche area. And I hope the people who are coming here, there may be, I keep saying if my mother was still alive, I'm sure it would, all the views would have been by her, but she's not living, she's been gone for a few years. But I hope people are coming because they are searching for answers for this dilemma that they're facing, where Christianity just no longer makes any sense. And that's the reason I'm doing this. That's where my heart is. My heart is not at all in criticizing organized religion. I mean, maybe there's a place for that, but not for me. I had a really great friend, a physician I worked with, who would always say his goal in life was to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. I like that philosophy, but I'm not here to afflict the comfortable anymore. And it's got to do more about me than the principle. And I'm at a phase in my life after dealing with cancer for 5 years. I feel my life is frail. That I don't know the future, and I don't want to fight with people anymore. There was another time in my life that I fought a lot. Not really fighting, but I stood up for principles despite being attacked and making people angry. So if you come here and you feel upset at things I'm saying, please just don't come if that's why you're coming. And I don't know why people do that, except when I was an evangelical, I would sometimes go to lectures that I knew I wasn't going to agree with. And I would go there as I saw myself as God's thought police or thought judge. And I'd be listening carefully if they're going to violate one of my doctrines. And if they did, I'd let them know. And letting them know in reality wasn't me trying to persuade them. to come to my views. It was part of my penitence or striving for piety, because I could check off, okay, I confronted that heretic today. That's another. So I don't want to draw that type of crowd at all. I've been at this process for 60 years of trying to make sense of the world, and unless you have an argument, even a good argument will take you 60 years probably to change my mind from where I'm at. And again, I don't have absolute certainty in all the things I say. Like for the instance, one of the things that some people maybe have been upset about, me saying that the Christian culture, including the church, what we call the church, which is very different from what the New Testament idea of the church. There it was community, it was people. Here it's a human organization, memberships and things like that. That I don't see the church or the Christian culture as a God thing, something created by God. And I don't mean it's evil. I've said that over and over. There's lots of good things in the organized church. But I don't see it as a structured just by God, that He put all this together. But I don't have certainty about that. Maybe someday God say, yeah, I did design the Christian culture and church just the way it was. That's the way I wanted it. I'll be surprised, but, I'm open to that possibility. So my heart, as I said just now, is with people who are disillusioned with Christianity and trying to make sense of it within this Christian culture. What I've been saying to this point, I've been trying to describe how we develop culture and social mores and rules of culture, and then apply it now to the Christian culture. And I think this will be my last conversation about this very issue. Going back again, culture, especially when it comes to politics and more when it comes to religion, is held at a very dear emotional place in our being, in our brains. And when people violate the rules of culture, especially in a religious context, it can be scary. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I ended up with the positions that I have, tell a few more stories. And I'm going to just segue in what I was just talking about, that I've always had an interest in history, more so since I've left evangelicalism. But even before I left, I taught a class in Ann Arbor, Michigan on church history. And I remember clearly doing a very revisionist history of Christian culture. I would go back and look at all the great saints in the Christian church, Catholic, Protestant, doesn't matter. And I would bring them to the forefront. And all these other bad things I hear about crusades and inquisitions, I would just blur that out. Probably the mindset I had then as an evangelical, everything inside your circle, your evangelical circle, are wonderful, great, almost perfect, and everything outside are of the devil. That's the way we saw the world, that dichotomy. For example, Ted Haggart, you may not remember, was the leader of the evangelical churches in America and preached often against homosexuality and family values. And then he was caught, of course, you may know the story, of having sex with gay sex with male prostitutes and smoking crack cocaine. And I think, who does that? I don't know anyone in my world that would do that. But he was a leader of evangelical churches. But I noticed the response right away was, oh, it's the evil liberals who are persecuting him, and this is all made up. And of course, it wasn't made up, and it's proven. Then people are saying, well, no one's perfect. Perfect? Was that the standard that he violated, was being perfect? But, it's just, for people inside the evangelical circle, we were always very forgiving and overlooked all their flaws. And that's why there is so much mischief that happens, I think, within the church, is that accommodating spirit of they're with us, so we're going to protect them. But then everyone outside, like an evangelical friend of mine, I still call him a friend. He's smart. He was a smart guy in college, but he said things that were really shocking. He does not watch any news program that has any homosexuals as part of their news department. And why? According to him, they're so evil, you can't trust them because they're homosexuals. So that I'm just trying to illustrate that point of that evangelical mindset that we had. So I can't remember where I was going with this, but I was talking about church history. That I saw all the people who criticized or had bad things to say about the church and Christian culture were of the devil, were evil. But then, after in 1990, I left evangelicalism. I came back and I really spent 10 years in studying. The first 4 years of that focused on church history. I want to know what the hell was my last 29 years of evangelicalism. It makes no sense. Where did that come from? Did it come from the Bible? And in my discovery, it wasn't. It was a cultural phenomena that happened. And I went back and started studying church history all the way back as far as I could. Once you get about the 5th century and on back, it becomes more and more difficult to find documents. But when I studied church history that time, then I ended up leading 2 courses in church history after that. And it was done within a context of a church. And I told the people, I said, I have to be honest. I have to tell the story the way it happened. But when you look at church history, all the way up until today, I'm not talking about, Middle Ages, just the Middle Ages, all the way up till today, the church is full of mischief. And if the standard isn't perfect, like, oh no, the church is not perfect. No, the church was extremely corrupt. They have estimated that almost 900 million people have been murdered by Christians in the last 2,000 years over dogmas, inquisitions, crusades. Even some of the modern wars had a strong Christian theme. And I'm not going to go into that. But except to say, even the situation right now in Israel, it was hideous what Hamas did to the Israelis was it October 7th? I forgot the date now. But it was hideous. There's no question it was hideous. And they're operating from the same problem as what I'm saying the Christians operate from, a religious zeal wrapped up in emotion that turned them into evil people doing these terrible things. But now, look at what's happened to Palestinians, most of them completely innocent of this. They had nothing to do with the attack on the Israelis, and they're being slaughtered tenfold of how many Israelis were killed. So I'm against war on both sides. So don't get me wrong, I'm not favoring Palestinians over Israelis, but just the quantity of destruction that's going on in Palestine right now. But I ran into some evangelicals that are really excited about this war in Palestine because it fulfills some of their bizarre end times prophecy. That, the idea that Israel was going to be part of end times prophecy for the Christian is a new concept in 1850s that John Nelson Darby, I think, came up with the first time. Then C.I. Schofield in the States promoted this idea. But even now, the church has so much mischief and corruption that when I look at it long term, I say this cannot be an instrument of God. Now, again, I have to clarify, the church is also filled all the way back to the beginning of saints, godly saints, people far better than I am. Artists, beautiful cathedrals, beautiful music, beautiful art, all these things. It's true, and you can celebrate that. You can celebrate your church now. If you go to a church that's filled with all these wonderful people, celebrate it. And that's why I'm telling people who are happy with the Christian culture, please stay there, enjoy it. It's not evil. There can be evil things in it, just like there can be evil things in I keep picking on the Kiwanis Club or the Smithsonian Institute. There's good and evil in all human institutions. So I see, excuse me, I still have a cold. I see God's church is profoundly simple. It is a community of believers. That's it. That's it. If you look at the Bible honestly without projecting your culture into it with all these dogmas and layers of function and organization and all these things. When you look at it honestly, it is profoundly simple. Just look at the Beatitudes. Look at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Look at the way Christ lived. You can then gather how profoundly simple it is to be a Christian. And that's why I'm doing this series, is to help those who feel conflicted. They love Christ. They've been conflicted with Christian culture. And I'm saying, let the culture go. It's extraneous is all I'm saying. It's not evil. It's just, well, it can be evil and it can be good, but it's extraneous. And that really upsets some people. And that's why I want this conversation to be really a niche. And again, I probably feel more comfortable with 5 people than 20. Some people will know that I used to blog and I get off writing on some of these topics. And it became too painful for me because not often, but every now and then, someone would feel obligated to let me know that I'm not a real Christian based on things I've written, and I don't have a relationship with God the way they do. And I've heard that over and over and over for 30 years. And I'm really just tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's painful. It's very, very painful. Especially in the last 5 years when I've been dealing with cancer and I've been alone for most of this time. And my relationship with God is beyond what I thought it could ever be. And to have other people tell me that it's not legitimate because I taught a Sunday school class on science. And I was pointed out to me that's not, my faith is not legitimate if I involve science. I'm going to talk about this later. And I am not, some people say, well, you're doing the same thing. No, I am not. I am not. This is not personal. I'm not going after anyone. I would never go to someone in my church and walk up to them and tell them that their relationship with God is not authentic because they love the Christian culture. First of all, because how in the hell would I know? I wouldn't know, and it's none of my business. And it never entered my thoughts. So that's why it is different when people write me emails and tell me, that, and they're angry. And I understand they're angry. And I think if you look at it from a Freudian level, psychoanalytic level, that when other people do things that violate the culture that we love, we take it personally because it seems to subtract from our own personal meaning. I'm trying to give an example. Well, you look at the, I was going to say transgender, but say not transgender, but men who dress as women. They're hated all over the world, not just in Christian cultures and atheist cultures. They're hated, and so it's not a Christian thing to hate. I don't want to get into all the different labels within the gay world, and not even some of them not even gay. But I don't want to get into that. But it's because when a man dresses as a woman, I don't believe this honestly. I'm just telling you why I think some people get so upset. It's offensive to me because I don't dress as a woman, and they're saying they have a better culture than me, and it makes me angry, blah, blah, blah. That's how that works, I think. And I don't think it has much to do. Why do Christians pick out homosexuality as people to hate? Why don't they hate adulterers? Why don't they hate money lovers? Why don't they hate murderers? That's the thing that the Bible really emphasizes. But anyway, that's a tangent. I'm going to tell a few more stories and then end this whole series on Christian culture. I do have some more things I want to talk about. I want to talk about how we find truth. I think that's very important. I want to look at the history of philosophical movements and its influence on the church and society. But I'm going to end this here today by telling a couple of stories. I probably wrote out about 15 stories, and I had to choose just a few. Again, I'm being redundant, but I left evangelicalism in 1990. I continued going to church because my wife, she had a positive church upbringing in the Lutheran church. I mean, more positive than mine, more sincere, I assume, more higher church kind of things they're important to her, and that's fine. I respect that. Not just like I respect people who go to my church who value those things a great deal. I respect them. But so we continued going to church, even though personally I was agnostic, and I even got to a place of being atheist for a while, but I was still studying. I was searching, and trying to find truth. Is there a God? If there's God, who is the God? If there's not a God, I just wanted to find a truth. And it took me a few years that as I read scripture again, I sort of rediscovered the historical Jesus that had been buried in all this Christian culture, this evangelical culture of dogmas and mores and pretending you're perfect, pretending your children are perfect. It's this competition thing going on all the time. That's why I call it Barbie land. But when I rediscovered the historical Jesus, I sort of really like the guy. And I have to watch my words because I'm afraid there might be one or two people here who are taking notes, to see if I say something that's not correct. So to make it clear, I came back to Jesus Christ of Nazareth as the Messiah, as the resurrected Jesus. And, if that doesn't make me a Christian, I'm sorry, then no one's a Christian. But at that time, I said, okay, we're talking about mid-90s now. I'm going to jump back into the evangelical church because I've discovered all these great things, and I think I could be a positive influence. And it became a 30-year frustration trying to survive inside the evangelical church, because it finally dawned on me they were not promoting the kingdom of God the way they said. They were promoting the Christian culture, and that was the number one issue. And I'll illustrate with a couple of stories. I was attending a very large evangelical church in Marquette, Michigan, during those years, I was in church every time the doors was open. I was a Sunday school teacher. I was a leader in this and a leader in that. And I was an elder. And I did all these things that, people who know me today wouldn't recognize that because I'm peripherally involved with church. But I gave it my full heart. And just one example, and again, I could go on and on and on with these examples. That church, we had a beginning of the year meeting where we all sat around the elders. It's sort of like a retreat to set the priorities for the coming year. In the mid-90s in the evangelical world, the buzzword was the unchurched, reaching the unchurched. So that came up as our number one goal. And then Marquette, Michigan is a unique place. It reminds me a lot of Alaska. It's rural, it's wilderness, it's a lot of cold, long winters that life there divides between the religious and the bars. The religious is evangelicals, and there's quite a few Catholics. And the bars are people who drink heavily, fish. I mean, not that the religious people don't fish, but it was just two different worlds. So the unchurched in that world meant those people in the bars. So after we had that retreat, I took it to heart. I mean, I thought they were sincere. And I went to the largest bar in town at that time. It's called Margaritaville. Met with the bar owner, and I said, could I have a table of about 10 people here every Saturday night? And he looked at it, because it's a religious thing, and he didn't care about it being a religious thing. He just said, are you going to buy beer? And I said, certainly, I'll buy pitchers of beer for everyone. He said, as long as you buy beer, I don't care who you bring in. So I thought, okay, this was how our church can reach the unchurched. I will have a meeting in the bar every Saturday night. And that was a big commitment for me. I talked to the pastor. In this church, the pastor was not the major. He wasn't the alpha male. He was a quiet guy, very good guy. But there was an alpha male, a guy named Bob, who looked a lot like Santa Claus, except his beard was gray, more gray than white, but chubby, not that tall. But he was the authoritative voice in this church, led Sunday morning every Sunday before the preaching. And he was also the head elder. So it came time for me to speak. And I've been through this scenario so many times in churches where I join committees and I come up with ideas, and the response is like deer in the headlights, or to say my ideas are stupid. I'm used to it. It's just the way it is. But I came up with this idea, and I thought it dovetailed perfectly in what we just said was our number one goal, reaching the unchurched. So I started describing, I'm going to rent this space in the bar, and Bob you could tell he's getting agitated. He said, you're not going to let them have beer. I said, well, yeah. You go to a bar, you have beer. I'm going to buy the beer. And, there's a lot of Christian culture that does not believe in drinking alcohol, has nothing to do with the Bible like all the other Christian cultures. Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's about a feeling of piety. But anyway, he said, "You're going to have beer?" Yeah, okay. And I moved on. I'm going to have, he said, I'm going to have all these guys. We're going to discuss what's going on in their lives, things they're struggling with, their families, their jobs. And I'm going to inject, thoughts of Christianity, of Christ into this conversation. And I thought it was going to be wonderful. Well, he became really angry at me in this meeting. And, I have been a punching bag for so many years. And that night I was a punching bag. It makes me sick to my stomach, he said, that here's nothing but another sorry excuse to get people out of church. And I said, these people aren't in church. But he left this atmosphere that I was a complete unspiritual idiot for coming up with that idea. Very discouraging. So I still had that on my heart. And, I studied at the time that the number one reason there's this hemorrhage going on out of the church, if you look at America in general, maybe not so much in Marquette, is that people were moving from Christianity to what you would call a New Age mysticism, or it's a blend of Hinduism, Buddhism, just spirituality. Even, they're not good Buddhists, they're not good Hindus, they're not good Christians. They sort of blend this spirituality, and I'll talk about that later when I talk about postmodernism. So on my own, I told the pastor, and he was supportive, but he wasn't the loudest voice in this church. On my own, I decided to teach a course at the local library on the difference between Christian assertions and the assertions of Buddhism and Hinduism. I thought that would hit the nail on the head of what was going on in our American society. And it was a 12-week course. I had about 10, 12 people who came. We had a good time. They understood what I was doing. But when word got back to Bob that I was using philosophical language, he said that was just from the devil. It was just so frustrating. Here I am trying my best to save the church. I couldn't save the church. And then not only not being supported, the pastor supported me, but people like Bob and the general culture of the church did not support me and turned against me. Turned against me that I would consider serving beer. Turned against me because I would talk about philosophical things in a library with thinkers. And almost everyone in the group, except two guys, were in New Age spirituality. Two guys were actually Christians who came out of curiosity. So anyway, that was one of many examples. I was thinking about giving another example. I will give one more example. Sort of my Custer's last stand, my last stand with the evangelical church. And again, someone sent me an email that I cherry pick my experience with church. I really do not. I do not. I could go on and on and on and on and on and on. But my last experience, and this was very, very difficult for me personally, I've been a very faithful servant to this evangelical church, again, doing everything I could to support the church, support the pastor. And then the church showed a video series for several Sundays about, excuse me, there's a jet flying over, put on by Young Earth Creationists. I'm not going to get into that in this conversation, but I'm going to tell you my opinion, and it's based on I bet this year alone, I've spent over 100 hours listening to lectures by only Young Earth Creationists, by archaeologists, by anthropologists. I just really have a love for archaeologists and anthropology and geology. There is zero evidence in the real world for a 6,000-year-old Earth. Young Earth Creationists, they start with a dogma that you must believe the Earth is 6,000 years old, and that has absolutely nothing to do with the Bible. The Bible does not address the age of the Earth. It's part of the Christian culture. That's why I'll keep drawing these lines. These are not biblical. None of these things are biblical. But it's part of their culture, and they have to be dogmatic, and therefore, since there's no evidence to support their view, they make up all kinds of stuff. Just make it up, make it up, make it up. And none of it's true. None of it's true. And it's an embarrassment, that they go out in the name of Christianity. And the anthropologists see them as the biggest liars. But anyway, we're watching this video. I kept my mouth shut, and it was awful. Dinosaurs hanging out with humans in Africa even today. Loch Ness Monster is a dinosaur that's really there. Just crazy stuff. I kept my mouth shut till the very end. Here's the whole church, and we're having this conversation about the video series, and I just sat there just depressed, not saying anything. But I did point out we had 5 or 6 high schoolers in this group, and I said, here's the problem. Because my wife would always say, who cares how old the earth is? She's right on that level. Who cares? Until it becomes an issue like this. If we tell the high schoolers that the Bible says the earth is 6,000 years old, and it doesn't, and you must believe that to be a Christian, which is absurd, then when they get to college and they learn the truth that that the earth, that there's no evidence. You look genetically, geology, you look at anthropology, they always lie about the fossils. You look at dating, radiometric, carbon dating, all those things are very precise. They've been tested over and over and over. But the creationists lie about that. When they get to college and learn they've been lied to, they will think, all of Christianity is a big lie, just like Santa Claus was a big lie. That was my concern. It wasn't forcing someone to believe in the old earth or young earth. It was anytime you lie to kids and they find out they've been lied to is a problem. So I said that, and not I said it in a very quiet tone. The head elder, just like Bob in this other church, this head elder was very respected, far more than any respect I ever had, was very respected. He was turned around agitated and looked at me, said, my Bible said the earth is 6,000 years old, which spoiler, it does not. And if you don't believe the Bible, or since you don't believe the Bible, you're not a Christian. And no one in my church said a word. You could hear a pin drop. So I knew this was the last straw with the evangelical church. How do you function in a church where not only your spiritual value is pushed so far down, no one takes you seriously as a spiritual person, and then to say you're not even a Christian? How do you function in a church with that attitude? And I promise you, I had served faithfully until that point. I put up with a lot of BS, and I just put up with it, and faithfully. So I sent on a very nice letter to the church. I love you guys. It was so much enjoy being here 10 years. I just don't think I'm the right fit for this church, but I'll be back. I'll visit special times. Let's stay friends. I want to be your friend. That's the way that the email went. But the pastor intercepted the email, and it made him very angry. And I don't know why, except I was leaving his church. I didn't say anything that would upset people. But I was leaving his church, and he started sending me these emails that I didn't have the right to leave his church without going through him first. And I knew from his tone that it was very, very angry. To make a long story short, he showed up at my house when we were having a dinner for my kids. They were all going away for college, and we were becoming empty nesters. It's a pretty big deal. I could tell he's very angry, and I had to dismiss the kids from the table and sit there and let him yell at me in front of my family for an hour. I think I counted. I sat there, okay, total moral failures of mine. I think we got up to 12. And I lost my temper. When you have somebody yelling at you that you're pathetic, you're sick, you're hopeless, and he wasn't doing it because I didn't believe in a 6,000-year-old earth. He was doing it because I was leaving his church. And the reason I was leaving his church is because I couldn't function there when the congregation tells me I'm not a real Christian. Do you understand? I hope that makes sense. But looking at church history that I had studied, and now looking at this practical implication of just trying to be within this Christian culture and trying to have a positive role became impossible to do. And that's when it finally dawned on me, this thing going back 2,000 years, this big, thick, massive, convoluted thing of Christian culture is a human institution. It's a human design. But when I'm encouraging people now, and this is the whole purpose of my videotapes, that and keeping me sane, giving me something to do. I was hoping that my viewership wouldn't getting down to zero, and then I'd probably stop making these videos. But it does give me something to do. That if I'm reaching out to people who have come in conflict with the organized church, the Christian culture, and they really don't like it, I'm just saying, don't throw out the baby Jesus with the bathwater. Study the life of Christ. Forget the culture. It's extraneous. If you have to stop going to church, stop going to church. But there's going to be pushback. I'll mention one other church experience. Well, it's just thing after this Bob in Marquette, I decided to start a home church. I spent a year in study about home churches. I went out and visited home churches across America. I took this very, very seriously. But and the whole purpose was I wanted to create a church experience that was richer, where people actually talked to each other and uplifted. And if somebody was sick, we'd all be there. If somebody was hurting, we'd be there. That type of thing is what I dreamt of. Not this big, 700-person mega church that no one talked to each other. So it was trying to create a better church. But when I pulled out of the local church, we had hell to pay. Our kids' best friend's parents said, we don't allow our children to play with unchurched children. And we heard from family members, just extreme scrutiny and condemnation. So any culture that you pull out of, you expect to get that, especially a religious culture. And our religions become cultish when you pull out of their culture, because that's offensive to them, because they want to maintain the culture as being perfect. And if you pull out, that's a message that it's not perfect, and it really pisses them off. So unfortunately, that's what you have to pay when you give up the local Christian culture. So I've said enough about this, about culture and society, and I'm going to end it here. I've got more things to say. I have several more videos I'm going to do about how we find truth is one big thing. And that'll probably pick up on it next time. I really am grateful for you coming here. If you're someone who's wrestling with these things, you don't like Christian culture, but yet you like the historical Christ, you're the perfect person that I'm speaking to. And if you're someone who loves the Christian culture and is here to see if I say something that's wrong, so you can send me an email to tell me I'm a bad person, please don't do that. I use a term that we use in Appalachia. My self-esteem is about as high as a pissant's instep. After going through cancer, losing my career, not being a breadwinner anymore, being a drain on society. So when you write me nasty emails, it's painful, and I lose a lot of sleep over that. And I've had 2 such experiences in the last 2 months on a personal level, people wanting to tell me that my relationship with God is not authentic because I taught a Sunday school class that looked at science and also wrote some things in my blog about philosophy. But anyway, that's it. I really hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to end with some parting views of our rain, our beautiful rain. There's something about rain that the lake is almost invisible. It's just cleansing. It's refreshing and cleansing. And it's enjoyable. You have a great day.